Hi, this is Mario Andretti, and this is Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
All right, gearheads, we are very excited to have our next guest because this is a gentleman who is working with one of the iconic teams in Formula One, the McLaren Formula One team. And we have Joe Baguley. He's the VP and CTO, Chief Technology Officer for EMEA at VMware, one of our sponsors as well. Joe, welcome to Speed City.
Thank you very much for having me on. It's great to be here.
Well, I'm very excited to talk to you because I'm a gearhead, and I'm assuming you're a bit of a gearhead too. I've seen you involved in a few. Yeah.
Just a little bit. Yeah, just a little bit.
Well, good. And I'm a bit of a geek too, or nerd. I've spent my time in a very cold data center, probably like you. So
yeah. I have my grounding eating pizza in data centers. So yeah, we all done that. So it's good.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things that in technology you have to spend your time in the data center. So, well, look, I'm excited to talk to you because you guys are involved in our favorite sport of Formula One.
Yep.
But I've noticed so many technology companies being involved in Formula One, and And the overriding theme of what we want to talk about today is sustainability and how Formula One has their goals. But I know that in technology, whether your cloud servers are set up to mine Bitcoin or whether to distribute media or whatever, but there's a lot of energy use in technology. So that's one of the things you have to deal with, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. And so, for us, sustainability has been top of our agenda since our founding. And in fact, VMware, the VM stands for virtual machine. And so our very founding was in the process of, okay, there's thousands of servers all around the world, and typically people size them for their max demand. Okay, right. So, I know once a quarter or once a year, all my users are going to turn up and use this. So I'm going to buy the big server, but 99.9% of the year, it runs at 10% or even less was typically the average. And so what we did with virtualization was we enabled people to run multiple servers on one and move them around in real time. In fact, the cool thing about moving them around in real time was we named them DRS, which is dynamic resource scheduling, long before F1 had DRS. And so we enabled people to run a lot more and get the most use and the most efficient use out of the hardware they had, and the stuff they weren't using, they could actually turn off and then spin up on demand. So that was our founding, nearly 25 years ago. And ever since then, sustainability has been at the heart of what we do at VMware.
Well, I've been saying on the show when we announced that you guys were a sponsor of the show is that I remember the first time I saw VMware, and I was working in technology at the time. I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. So I can put multiple servers on one server. It took me a minute to get my head around it. And then they showed me how they can literally drag a server from one machine to another and
while it's running.
While it's running, right?
It's the coolest thing. Yeah. So I can move that server from one place to another without anyone noticing. And that's years old, but it's still the coolest tech.
It really is. It's amazing to watch while it's running. But correct me if I'm wrong, but we talk about who invented the cloud, and you can go all the way back to ARPANET and all that. But but you guys, with what you invented, it kind of enabled the cloud as we know it because of the virtualization, right?
Completely. Yeah, I mean, totally. So, the virtualization, that ability to move workloads around, to have multiple servers on one server, made the economic model for building public clouds actually viable for people. And so, yeah, virtualization is at the heart of every single public cloud that you see today. And we were the first people to do it on x86 processors. And yeah, and we're still, people talk about cloud and they always talk about public cloud, but actually by far the largest amount of compute nowadays is actually running in people's private data centers. So for large corporates, et cetera, in the private cloud, which is, where VMware lives too. So we live in all those spaces. We live on premises at the private cloud. We live in the public cloud and enable the public clouds to run all around the world. And at the same time, we're also at the edge now. So we support telcos and right down to the very edge of track, should we say, in terms of, taking those cloud technologies, that optimization, and seeing how far out we can push them, even to the back of police cars. So yeah, that premise of being able to be anywhere and move workloads around and spin things up on demand, and fundamentally a thing not being tied to a physical server is groundbreaking. And we're doing that everywhere we can.
Well, my guys on the show give me a hard time because I'm a nerd and I talk technology. But I think that a lot of the F1 audience is tech-centric. And that's one of my questions I wanted to ask today about VMware. You guys are just one of a lot of tech companies that have flocked to Formula One because, correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys see as sponsors, see that audience that I'm describing, that a lot of people that are enamored by technology are also drawn to Formula One because of its engineering and technology focus.
Well, so yeah, I mean, we don't really call ourselves sponsors. We're partners with McLaren, and McLaren refer to us as a partner, and we entered into this as a partnership. So it's a partnership about technology, and a lot of other technologies will say the same. And it really is the case that we came here because there's technology that McLaren wanted to use. There's scenarios like Extreme E right now where they're doing some really cool, fun stuff with technology that we wanted to get involved in testing as well. And across the board, there was a whole bunch of places where things just added up to say, okay, actually we can together do something great. So it's very much it's a partner thing around technology. And yeah, if I go out to our audience of VMware admins and IT administrators and infrastructure managers, right up to the CIO, I can find F1 and racing fans from top to bottom. And even within our company, you know, we have a huge fan base of Formula One, but more generically racing. You know, we have a group internally on Slack that I run just for the UK alone of UK track days and racing, which is packed full of our employees that are putting cars on track and taking part in real race series like myself and having fun. So yeah, it's in us. I think there's something about adrenaline, I think. I mean, associating IT with adrenaline, but there's some pretty adrenaline-packed moments I've had in IT. It's all about tech, right? It's all about tech. And I think personally, you know, I've been playing about in the UK with putting Teslas on track and competing in sprints and others with Teslas, and I'm part of a team working with Motorsport UK on doing that as well. So as we're bringing that next generation from a grassroots level. So from my perspective, yeah, you know, turning up as a CTO with essentially a computer on wheels and competing at track with it is pretty cool too, because I started my life, you know, playing with carburetors in Ford Escorts and rallying, and now I'm playing with, you know, active suspension and weird traction control settings on a Tesla. It's still fun. It's tweaking stuff, right?
Yeah, it's funny. Tech gearheads and petrol heads, all we share so many of the same passions. But well, let's talk about the nuts and bolts, or rather the ones and zeros of what VMware does for McLaren. What would the average McLaren fan see, or what could we talk about that they would understand from what you guys help McLaren with?
Yeah, so the first one actually is something that most people wouldn't know that wouldn't know that VMware does, but it's, you know, one of our leading products is for managing all of McLaren's mobile devices and laptops and everything that's not that's technology, that's got technology and that's not nailed down. So if you can understand, there's a big partnership they've done with Google and Chrome and Android, etc., and you'll see that all over the car, especially this weekend. And as part of that partnership, of course, there's Android devices everywhere. And so they were given a whole bunch of Android devices by Google when the partnership signed up. And it was, okay, we need to roll all these Android devices out to everyone in McLaren, both trackside and, you know, in the factory and everywhere else. But we need them to be deployed fast and secure, and that's exactly what we do for them. So if you see anyone from McLaren holding an electronic device in their hand, the fact that device is there, running, secure. If it's lost, we can replace it quickly, we can get them up to speed, all those kind of things is all managed by us, right down to the tablet that runs the Spotify playlist in the pitside garage, all managed by us. So that's sort of the first thing. The second thing is, if you'll understand that McLaren's using cloud, they're using Google Cloud, they're using on-premises cloud, and they're looking at us for our cloud costing and cloud management. So we provide technology that sits across all of that and make sure they've got the right thing in the right place, and they're making the most of their cost optimization. And, you know, F1 fans know about the cost cap, and we know how careful costs have to be in a Formula One environment. So keeping down to that very last cent or pence in the British Formula One team is really important. So yeah, managing the cost across their environment and understanding how it's being used and optimized is hugely important. And then the last one is SD-WAN, which is optimizing WAN connections. So if you can imagine, you know, they're traveling all over the world, not just in Formula One, but in Extreme E and IndyCar and Formula E and others. And so they're now looking at us as to how we can use our SD-WAN solutions to optimize their network connection. So, you know, maybe we're not going to be able to get because, you know, when you go to somewhere you get a network connection provided by the circuit, provided by FIA, by F1, but maybe you want to augment that with some Starlink and some local LTE and some other bits and pieces, and we do all of that to make sure that that connection back to Woking, to the MTC, is as good as it can possibly be, because in this business, data is winning or losing.
Yeah, it's funny. I talk about on the show when we do the live reads for you guys, and we talk about the multi-cloud, and I think of it as like, people have, like, for example, we've been hosting our podcasts on AWS for a decade, but also those same files, we may need to grab a clip to use on the SiriusXM show or the local radio show, and having there, essentially it is exactly that. It's just multiple clouds, all these different places, but you guys help manage that whole system of multiple clouds, right? Yeah,
and for McLaren, multiple cloud really means their own private cloud, their use of Google Cloud, and what they do at the edge. So multi-cloud isn't just using, different public clouds. It's the use of Google Cloud, it's the use of their on-premises private cloud, and it's the use of what they're doing at the edge, whether it's trackside in any of the series they're competing in. So multi-cloud isn't just about, let's say, that. It's about having a view across all your assets and making sure you're putting things in the right place. And then someone like a developer coming and saying, okay, I want to deploy a cool new app that the team's going to be using. And I want to be able to put a bit in Google, I want to put a bit in on-premises, and we're going to put some stuff in every trackside device. We can make that really easy and be done in one click, and that's the point. So it's not some big architectural thing, and it's much, much simpler to do. That's really what multi-cloud's about.
Well, one thing, when you think of Formula One, you obviously think of engineering and technology, but strategy is another important thing. So we got to think about the speed of the sport, but also the speed of the strategy. I mean, we've seen it so many times. Every single race, something happens and the team has to react. And they have sometimes, just a few seconds to make a decision. Do we pit now? What do we do? And they got to look at the data. And how do you guys fit into that puzzle of making sure that data is enabled quickly?
Well, we're making sure with what we're doing with our SD-WAN solutions for McLaren Racing that the data is getting to the right places as fast as it possibly can. But going forward, we're talking to them about what we can do from an AI and machine learning perspective, because machine learning and AI is all about getting decisions made quickly and enabling people to get better decisions made faster. And so the more you can move the compute and the machine learning closer to where the data's happening, the better. So, in a race scenario, you might not be able to wait for the data to be streamed from the car back to the pits, and then from the pits up to the cloud, then the cloud to do some machine learning on it for them to come back down again. That machine learning might actually have to happen in the pits, in the garage right there. It might have to actually happen on the car. So the discussions that we're having at the moment, talking to McLaren, are around how we can say, okay, well, where can we put machine learning? How can we move machine learning and AI and that decision-making process around the data that you're using in conjunction with your other partners that do, help them with their data management? How can we move the workloads and make sure the compute and the machine learning is in the right place? And it's a very exciting thing, in addition to obviously making sure the data is in the right place as well.
Well, that's fascinating, because we look at thousandths of a second in Formula One all the time, right? In qualifying especially. But I think about the latency that you're describing of trying to go with that data from the car. You don't want to go up to the cloud and over across Europe and then back. So you're trying to eliminate that latency by directly getting that data as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and stuff's happening. F1's incredibly real time, And if you go and sit in any of the control centers, these people are not just watching their cars, they're watching the live feeds from every car that's available through FIA, and they're tracking what's happening with every car. And that's affecting their strategy, whether they're going to pit now, whether they're going to pit in 3 laps, in 2 laps, whether they're going to change their pit strategy, what tires they're going to do, etc. And so you've got tools there modeling that all the time. And as the data changes, for example, driver X has a blowout, or there's a safety car, or something happens, or whatever, or just another driver decides to come in to change his tires, and everyone's like, why was he doing that then? That data goes in and it suddenly changes thousands of potential models going forward. So if you imagine chess, right? Chess, the way the computers play chess is they model every single possible move, right? So that's what we're doing in F1, is you're saying, okay, you're going to model every single possible move from now to the end of the race. What could they do? What could they do? What could we do? What's the best possible outcome? Of course, that's all about speed of data. So yeah, the conversations in F1 are always about that speed.
That is a brilliant comparison about how chess modeling, they literally play out the game. And that's exactly what those computers are doing for Formula One.
And that's exactly what they're doing. They're playing out the game for every single team and saying, okay, well, and what happens if they then stop then, and that stops then, and this happens, and then it rains, and then it, can you imagine that? Every possible scenario, So you've got to optimize that. You've got to run that in, and you can't do all of it. You've got to do it fast, and it's how fast can you do it? It's a really exciting from a gearhead, a techie perspective. How cool is that, right?
Yeah,
it really gets you excited to get involved in that.
I completely agree. I've never heard it put that way, and I love that comparison because it's easy to understand. Chess moves are simple compared to the complexity of what's happening on a Formula One circuit. But, well, Joe, one of the things that really made me want to talk to you guys, and when I saw it was you, I got really excited because now we can talk all this geek talk. But what really made me think about this was how you guys are choosing to partner with Formula One teams. And I wondered if the sustainability aspect, how much that played into it, because you guys as a company need to be smart on who you partner with, right, and who you publicly partner with. And Formula One has been very vocal about their net zero goal of 2030. And honestly, what made me think of this is how Live Golf and all of that, the Saudi, and how all that played into it. And I know it can get a whole different direction, but I thought I would imagine that VMware would want to partner with Formula One because of the technology, but also their sustainability goals.
So sustainability is at the heart of what we do at VMware. We publish annual reports on what we're doing in that space, and it's not just across sustainability; it's across the whole ESG spectrum. So not just the environmental piece, but the societal and the governance as well. And I sponsor and lead actually ESG in EMEA, in Europe, Middle East, and Africa anyway. And so when we were talking about sponsoring a Formula One team, of course, the first thing you're like is, well, hang on a second, really, sustainability. And then when you sat down with McLaren specifically, and McLaren Racing as a group, their vision around, they were the first to provide a sustainability report. They're the first ones to talk openly about sustainability. They're the first ones to talk about having a circular F1 car by a particular time. They've got net zero commitments by 2040. And the steps that they're making, the active open steps. And the important thing is it's not greenwashing in any way, shape or form. If you go to the MTC, you work with these people as we do and partner with them, you understand it literally is becoming core part of their culture. That meant something. And also importantly, because they're not just in F1, McLaren Racing is unique because McLaren Racing is in F1. Yes, it's in Indy, but it's also in EXTREME, which is really breaking grounds around the future of motorsport, and Formula E with the recent acquisition of the Mercedes team and now entering into Formula E, and esports too. So if you look across, when you talk to McLaren Racing, they talk across 5 sports that they take part in, not just F1. It's across all of them. Our conversations with them are across all of those. And the great thing is each one of those different parts of the McLaren Racing is looking at sustainability slightly differently, and they're all talking to each other, and they're all sharing tips and hints on how they can do things, and we did that and we did this, and it's working across the groups. They're actually accelerating each other as they go down this journey. And when you sort of compare that to, I work in the office of the CTO at VMware as the CTO, and that's our job, is to look across the whole of our company and make sure we're making the best of what everyone's doing and bringing best practices from here and there. The way McLaren worked so aligned with us, particularly around sustainability and their take on it, it was kind of like, okay, actually, we could be part of this and we could maybe accelerate this, so we can get into this and we can hopefully help McLaren get more sustainable even quicker, despite them already being in the lead on sustainability. And that to me was like, actually, I can live with that personally. I'm a man who has electric cars on my driveway and solar panels and batteries and all those kind of things, and I care a lot about the impact of myself. And so this partnership was really important to us. And we actually, our chief sustainability officer as well, Nicola, we had long talks with her about it. And then when you look at things like EXTREME, the legacy project they're doing, where they're going back to places where they've raced, and like in Dakar with the Million Mangrove project and the other bits and pieces they're doing all over the place, it's all about making sure that we're doing things in the right way. And I think that ethics has to come into this, right? Sustainable fuels by 2026 in F1 is exciting. Net zero by 2030 is exciting. It's exciting for everyone. So let's be part of that. I want to be part of that and be part of the technology that's going on in there too.
And Formula One has a long history of this, because the technology that in internal combustion engines, even if you think about variable valve timing, that's one of my favorite inventions in the internal combustion engine, because it immediately, it's almost like what you said about the bandwidth of servers. You build a big server. Well, in the old days, you built especially in the States here, we built a big V8.
Big engines.
And you just ran it at low RPMs all the time. Well, you can do this with, variable valve timing that it originated in Formula One, if I'm not mistaken, trickled down and allowed you to have the same torque curve in a 3-liter motor as you had in a 5-liter motor. So and Formula One has led the way at that. And I love what you said, that you mentioned sustainable fuels, because, Porsche is big into that as well. And I'm thinking that this is a way for us gearheads who like the mechanical nature of an internal combustion engine to have our cake and eat it too, with these sustainable fuels, and combining that with electric power. To me, that's the ultimate supercar, right? Is having a sustainable fuel and electric power.
Yeah, it's looking at it from a much bigger picture, I think. So if you look at it, you've got to look at the full energy cycle of these kind of things as well, right? So the energy cycle piece is, if I just get a solar panel on my house and I charge my electric car and I drive it, then it's a very short energy cycle. It's highly efficient. If I take a solar panel and I use that to get CO2 from the atmosphere and make a sustainable fuel, which is one of the answers that we're doing here, then what's the energy cycle of that, and how does that then get shipped into the car, etc.? And I think, long term, we'll be looking at that and probably ending up driving around in a lot of electric cars. And electric cars can be incredibly exciting. Promise you, they really can. Yeah. I've been in some unbelievable, just look at McMurtry and some of the other stuff. There's some phenomenal things happening in the electric car world. But equally, like you, I was raised with the sound of a V12 being something that still excites me. So if there's a way that going forward in the future, those kind of things can still exist for us, even as historical pieces, but we can run them in an ethical and sustainable way, that's fantastic as far as I'm concerned. I think that's brilliant, and I honestly think that going forward, like today, right, we drive around in these cars, and then at weekends we play with these dirty, smelly things, or rich people play with dirty, smelly things called horses. Right, that they ride about on at weekends. But you get up in the morning, go to the office, you're like, I'm not going to ride the horse, I'm going to go get in the car because it's easier. I think fast forward some years, you're going to get to the, well, I'm not going to take the old internal combustion engine thing, I'm going to take the electric car to get to work and back. But it's the weekend, so I'm going to go and get out the DB9, and I'm going to go and run out of my sustainable fuel, and I'm going to have some fun at a racetrack. That's no different to someone right now riding their horse around at a weekend, But I think we need to find ways to make that sustainable, because there's better things to be doing with oil than burning it.
Well, I'm really excited to hear your message, because this is exactly what I've been thinking, and I love that the sport itself has had this goal for a long time, and I love that the sponsors are coming, and partners, as you say, because again, like you said, if you can make it better, if you can make McLaren better with your technology, it's really exciting. And I really appreciate your time today. I know we're already out of time. This interview has blinked by. I look up because I'm so passionate about F1, but I'm also pretty passionate about technology. So this is a dream for me. So Joe, I really appreciate your time, and I wish you guys all the best of luck working with McLaren.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much. And I'd love to chat again sometime.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We'll get you back on. Thanks, Joe.
Cheers.